everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to share with you my November wrap up, and November has been kind of a interesting month to say the least, because I started doing my every book all at once journey. Now if you haven't watched my videos so far, I stole this idea from my friend Clio on the channel Bemused Bookworm, who did this last year, and because I want to reach a 0 TBR and I have been falling behind a little bit with this plan, I started reading all of my pre-2025 books that I physically own at the same time in November. Now I took out a few books that were on my December TBR, but yeah, we're reading a ton of books at the same time in this household right now, and because of that the wrap up is a little bit weird because I will talk about the books that I have actually finished in November. I have read so much more though, so it's a little bit odd, and if you want to see the whole journey, you can watch my reading vlogs. I can link them down below. The chaos is definitely fun and entertaining, and so far I don't feel too stressed out. I feel like I'm making good progress, so yeah. This is a journey I will continue in December as well, but you're not here to hear me rumble about that. So first of all, I want to go into a couple of stats for the month, and then we will discuss all the books that I have finished in November. Now for this stats part, I usually have some stats that have to do with my goal of reaching the 0 TBR by the end of the year. So first things first, I have abandoned the idea of actually reaching a 0 TBR. For now, my goal is to read all the books that I have owned at the beginning of the year by the end of the year. So we won't go down to 0, we will probably end up around 10-ish, but let's see how we did in November with that. So just as a reminder, I started out the year with 37 books on my physical TBR. Now throughout the month, that number went up quite a bit, unfortunately. And so I started out November with 30 books on my TBR. So we had finally gotten the number down from where we started the year. And so now every progress is working, towards pushing that number down. So the first important number for these stats is the number of books that I have finished in November, and that was 10 books, which was a little bit surprising to me, honestly. I really didn't expect to finish so many books because of the project, and I'm very proud that even though the project was going on, I still managed to finish 10 books. Then we have to look at the number of books that I have bought in November, and that was 2 books. So that is a very low number that I'm happy with. And then we have the number of books that I have borrowed in November, and again that was 2 books. So again, this is a low number that I'm very happy with. Further, I did 1 reread in November, so that doesn't actually reduce the TBR because I had already read the book before. Now, if we take this all together, 10 books finished, 2 books bought, 2 books borrowed, and 1 reread, I reduced my TBR by 5 books in November. And I gotta be honest, because of the project, I'm very proud of that. This is not the highest number I have reached throughout the year, but it is a very solid number of TBR reduction for me. So yeah. Pat on the back for me. I'm very proud of that. So we're going into December with 25 books on the TBR, and let's see how much we can push that number down with the project now. So next I want to go through all of those 10 books that I have finished and give you little mini reviews. So right at the start of the month, I finished reading The God of Lost Words by H.A. Hackwith. This is such a milestone for me because it took me so many years to finally finish this series, but I absolutely love it, and I did film a whole reading vlog for this series, so if you want to hear all of my thoughts, you can go and check it out. Now, this is the 3rd book in the series, so I can't really talk about much that isn't like a spoiler for the rest of the series. And it's also the finale. So with this one, we kind of learn where all of our characters end up. I really like this one. I think that the first book in the series is still my favorite one, just because the introduction into this world was so cool. In this one, we follow a main character called Claire, who is the head librarian in Hell's library of the unwritten books. So all the books that that someone thinks of but never writes down, never publishes. They all end up in this library in hell. And these books can come to life in form of a character from the book, and they can try to escape. And at the beginning of the first book, one of the books has escaped, and Claire and her assistant Brevity, who is a muse, they go to Earth to catch that book, but they end up muddled in a plot of some angels who are looking for pages of a devil's Bible. So everything gets very complicated very quickly. I love these characters a lot. I'm so happy I finally finished the series, and I gave this one kind of like 4.25 stars, but rounded up to 4.5. Then the next book I finished was my audiobook, The Heart Forger by Chupeco. This is the second book in the Bone Witch series, and I also finished The Shadow Glass in November, so I'm just going to talk about them together here. The Shadow Glass is the third book in the series and the finale. And again, I have a whole reading vlog for that series, so if you want to hear all of my thoughts about it, I will link it down below. I know that these series vlogs turn very long usually, and I'm very sorry about it, but I just love gushing about a series, and this Bone Witch series is definitely one I needed to gush about. In this series, we are following a Bone Witch. We follow her from the moment where she kind of discovers her powers, because her brother is killed in a war with these monsters, and he is being buried, and she feels so much pain about his death that she brings him back to life, and that is how they figure out that she's a Bone Witch. So another Bone Witch comes and tells her, hey, I'm gonna take you away to this city where we have these Ashaka, where young witches, which are called Asha in this world, can learn their magic, but they also learn how to fight, but also how to entertain. So they learn how to sing and how to dance and all of that. For the majority of the first book, we follow our main character as she learns about her magic. However, by the end of the series, everything gets so big and dramatic, and it is so intense. We do have a very good like romance in this series, kind of like a reluctant allies to lovers situation. So we do have a lot of like mistrust between the two characters, and then they learn to trust each other and stuff like that. So overall, I loved the series. I loved all of these characters, and even though this is marketed as a YA series, it's not holding back. There are such high stakes in the series. I would highly recommend it. As I said, if you want to hear all of my thoughts, and there are a lot of thoughts in my head about this series, then you can go and check out the reading vlog. I gave The Heart Forger 4.5 stars, and I gave The Shadow Glass 4.5 stars as well. Then I did a little reading weekend project, and I read Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is the 5th new to me author I wanted to try this year, so there will be a reading vlog for this book. It will be the next video that goes up on my channel, so if you want to see that, don't forget to subscribe so you will get notified. Again, all of my thoughts are in that video, so I'm going to keep it short here. This is a book that I went into it knowing absolutely nothing about it. I had just heard like good things about Zora Neale Hurston, and this is the book title that I've heard most often, so I guess it's her like most well-known popular book. In this book, we follow our main character of Janie. As she grows up, she is living with her grandmother, and the grandmother is worried that she might pass away soon, and she wants Janie to be safe and to make sure that Janie is taken care of. So she makes Janie basically marry this a little bit richer farmer. However, Janie is not happy in that marriage, and when she meets a man who is passing through the town, and he seems to be rich and also have like very high aspirations, she decides to run away with him. And it's all about her life from that point onwards. She will have kind of like 3 men in her life, 3 husbands, and we hear about her life story. Now, first of all, the writing in this book is absolutely stunning. I read the first couple of lines in this book and it hooked me immediately. I think the beginning is so strong, and Janie as a main character is such a fantastic character to follow. You can really see that she is striving for something, and that in a time when for a Black woman there weren't really that many options to freely live her life. Now, I would say this is set around the 1920s and 1930s, and so yeah, Janie really does have like a picture perfect life, but I really love the strength she has to make it her own and kind of make her own decisions, even if people tell her she has to behave in a different way. And I absolutely love it. In the beginning of this book, we see Janie return to this town, Eatonville in Florida, which was one of the first kind of Black towns, I think, where like Black people completely built the town and held all the offices and stuff. That's how I understand it. I'm not very good with US history, unfortunately. But she returns to this town, and basically all of her neighbors are out on their porches and they're like whispering and having like discussions where she has been and what she has done. At this point in time, Janie is about 40 and she just ignores everyone, and she goes into her house, and then her kind of best friend comes to her and kind of asks like, hey, what's going on? Like, do you want to tell me? And so we read Janie's story to her best friend. She's basically telling her what has happened. And a lot of this is so tragic, but so beautiful, like especially the second half of the book. It was so good, and I was fearing for these characters. There were like moments that were so tense. It's just great. It's really just great. So I gave this book 4.5 stars as well. I just feel like I wanted the first part of the book to be a little bit shorter and maybe explore the second part a little bit more. But yeah, really, really great. Highly recommend. Then the next book I finished was The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This was another audiobook, and this was kind of my last Halloweenish read, I would say. This was kind of left over from my Halloween TBR. And I feel like I read this one a little bit too late. Like my mood was already shifting away from the horror. However, I still had a good time with this book. I just didn't love it as much as I was hoping. So I have read Yellow Jasmine by Caitlin Starling, and I absolutely loved that novella. And I think Starving Saints has a similar vibe to it. However, it's not a novella, it's a full-length novel. And for me personally, I feel like if it had been a novella, I would have loved it a little bit more, because this book is mostly vibes. There is some character work and some world building, but the vibes are what is like really special about this book, let's just say that. So in this one, we are following three women who are stuck in this castle that is besieged. They have reached a point where they don't have food anymore, and these three women are wrapped up in all of this. So we have a lady knight who's trying to protect her king. We have a kind of a witch who's trying to save this castle with her alchemy. She's trying to conjure food from nothing. And we have a former noblewoman who is seeking revenge for the killing of her father because he was marked as a traitor, and she's lost everything. Now this has a very like medieval feel to it. We're not really leaving the castle, so everything is very contained in this setting, and we're just following these three women trying to make it through. So it takes a little while before the story really kicks off, but it does when 3 or 4, I think it's 4 saints appear in the middle of the castle. Nobody knows where they came from, but magically they have brought food. But our three main characters are concerned if this is really saints or something else. Now this is a cannibalistic book, so be prepared if you go into this. I really loved it. There is a lot of like buzzwords that I enjoy, like saints, for example. I love books about saints. I love this kind of medieval feel, especially for horror. I think it works really well. And yeah, I had a good time with it. But while listening to it, I found my mind wandering a lot, like not really taking in the story that much. And so in the end, I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was just too long for me. Then I finished at least one book from my reading project of reading all of my books at once, and that was The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich. This is a non-fiction book about female soldiers in the Russian military during the Second World War. This basically has transcripts of their interviews, and the author has put in very little of her own commentary. She really just organized the interviews into kind of subject matters that these women talked about. It is very, very interesting how many testimonies the author has collected for this project. I absolutely love this book. It is a very hard read because these women are talking about their real life experiences during the Second World War, seeing the horrific things that German soldiers did on Russian soil, as well as horrific things that Russian soldiers did while they were kind of standing by. So yeah, a lot of tough reads in this one. This also talks about the sexism of the time, the way that oftentimes the girls were sent away when they wanted to sign up for the war, and they had to really insist on serving in the military. And also, especially after the war, the way these women were treated, especially by other women who were saying that they were whores because they were with the men at the front lines and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in this book. None of it is particularly nice, but I gave this one 5 stars. I think everyone should read it. And I think if the women in this book were still alive today, they would be horrified by the war that Russia started with Ukraine. Then my chaos wheel was so nice to let me finish another book. Now, this was the reread, Carry On by Rowell. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love this book. I think it's now 10 years since I read this one for the first time, maybe. So that is absolutely wild to me. In this one, we follow our main character of Simon Snow, who is the chosen one of his world. He's going to a magical school called Watford, and he is in his final year. He has a roommate who is his enemy and also a vampire called Baz, and he has his best friend Penelope and his girlfriend Agatha. And together it is their job to survive this final year and also save the magical world. And I love this book. Now, you can definitely see that it was heavily inspired by Harry Potter, and it's almost like a satire, which I love. I love what it does with some of the tropes that we see, especially in that series. It's just great. This is also very gay and I love it. I love the relationship of Baz and Simon. If you're looking for really enemies to lovers, but they kind of stay enemies while they love each other, it's perfect. I love this so much. Now, this is YA, so the writing style is a little bit interesting. It's not my favorite writing style per se, but I think it works for the story, it works for these characters, and really the moment Baz appears in this book, I am just living my best life. I love this book so much, so I gave it 5 stars on reread again, and I can't wait for the wheel to finally let me start the second book in the series. I have read that one before as well. It's not as great as this one, but yeah, I definitely want to finish off this series before the year is over. And last but not least, I started getting into my holiday reads, and I finished 2 by the end of November. The first one was the winner of my holiday audiobook audit, which I will link down below, where I go through over 100 new holiday books, holiday romances mostly, and choose my favorite one to kind of kickstart my holiday reading for the year. And my winner this year was Cooking Up a Christmas Storm by Amelia Berry. In this one, we follow a bisexual main character who has just had a terrible breakup with her ex-girlfriend. She's really not coping well, she's not doing well, she's about to lose her flat because she can't pay the rent on her own when she gets this call, and the caller thinks she is her ex-girlfriend and offers her a job. And so she takes it pretending to be her ex-girlfriend. And so she goes into, I think, the Scottish Highlands somewhere, it's already getting a little bit fuzzy in my brain. And she works for this cookery school kind of as a manager of their like advertising and, you know, just making them more of a thing that people know, and all of that. So it's like very, very cute. The main character to me read like very much like a person with ADHD. However, it's never brought up in the book, so it might just be my wrong conclusion. I don't know about that. But still, I really liked following her and tackling all the negative things she thinks about herself, which are mostly related to her previous relationship that wasn't very healthy. Now, while she's up there, she meets this man who's kind of like a handyman in the town who's trying to always fix everything, and they feel drawn to each other. I thought it was very cute. Now, the one thing I will say is that it didn't have as much kind of like Christmassy holiday stuff in it that I thought, like from the title and stuff. It is mostly set in November and then kind of jumps over Christmas and targets New Year's Eve. So if you're fine with that, 100% I would recommend reading this book. And I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book I finished in November was a very short one. It's one of those terrible Audible exclusive ones. So we have Booked for the Holidays by Liz Maverick. This is a Hanukkah romance, so that's why I was interested in it. And in this one we follow an editor who goes to the house of her it's an author for a cozy mystery series, and the author is already very old, and this is supposed to be like the final book in that long running series. However, when she gets there, the grandson of the author opens the door, and it turns out that the author has passed away and that the grandson is secretly trying to finish writing the manuscript for this final book because he promised to his grandmother that he would do it. And so our 2 main characters band together over the holidays, the Hanukkah time, to finish writing this book. This was really sweet and really cute. It was a little bit short, like I think I would have enjoyed it even more if it was like a full-length novel, because some of the things were rushed a little bit in this one. However, I had a good time. I especially liked the male narrator for the audiobook. His voice reminded me of Joel Maisel in the TV show Mrs. Maisel, and I just really like his like accent and the way he just says things. So in the end, I gave this one 4 stars as well, and I would recommend if you have Audible anyways. Now, maybe for both of these romancy books, both of them did not have explicit sex scenes, so they weren't really that spicy. If that is something you're interested in or avoiding, either way, I thought I just mentioned that as well. And that's it for my November wrap up. I hope that was interesting to watch, especially if the vlogs were a little bit too chaotic for you. Definitely let me know what was your favorite book that you've read in November. I would love to hear about that, as I'm starting to slowly build my reading list for 2026. If I manage to finish my project, I will definitely have a lot more like free space to fill with books that I want to read in the moment, and I'm very excited for that. So yeah, I'm already really looking forward to reading next year, and I hope you do so too. But for now, I hope you have a lovely December with your reading, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!